Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of History Hack, which didn't exist until about 48 hours ago and now has gone absolutely crazy. I'm Alex Churchill and with me is Alina.
Hello.
Alina, pronounce your surname for me because I can't call you Nobbles. It's really unprofessional.
Nowobilska.
Yeah, what she said. Okay, so firstly, some housekeeping. I don't ever want you to think that we're not taking this pandemic seriously. It is, of course, devastating. People are separated from their families. We have people stranded about the world. There's just heartbreaking footage coming out of Italy. I can't even watch anymore. A country and a people I adore. But we created this to provide you all with light relief, and we're going to stick to that. So the sheer response of the historian community to the idea of donating their time to this project has been phenomenal. We're already getting ready to bring you the likes of Mary Beard, Saul David, Dan Jones, beyond that, Tom Holland, James Holland, and established historians from around the globe. But we've also got lesser knowns who are specialising in some really niche, interesting stuff. We're going to talk about North American pandemics and the wiping out of the indigenous population, how the ancient world dealt with plagues, and we're going to do our best to have some archaeology every week. We're going to talk Inca history with two guys who actually work the famous trail, and we're also going to be talking to Pakistan's most prominent journalist about the history he has witnessed in the last 30 years. We're even going to try and fill the sport void. So we have the Football History Boys. They're an award-winning blog coming on. And Ferrari's self-proclaimed biggest fan will be coming on to talk about the three best races in their Formula One history. We've got guests lined up from the US, Egypt, Pakistan, Australia, France, Belgium, Ireland. We're going to have a separate show every week, half an hour, called Poland Picks, because Alina is Polish, in case you couldn't tell by that surname, and has some amazing contacts. So we're going to do a little focus show, probably more serious, that we'll release once a week. And we've even opened the doors to our own virtual pub. So every Friday evening, we will be doing a slightly extended show, more towards an hour, and we'll mix on a particular topic. We'll ask a question. So this week, the question is, what is the greatest ship ever built? And we're going to have a mixture of naval historians and enthusiasts come on and have a very relaxed sort of we hope everyone will have a drink in hand and we'll have a very relaxed conversation and debate it for an hour or so. We make this pledge to you now. We will do our best to not let boredom prevail. Can I stop being serious now?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Just stop.
Right. So I'm going to hand over to Alina now to introduce our first ever guests.
Is that because you've never heard of them?
Pretty much. I can't do anything after 1937. Is it even 1938 yet? My brain stops there.
We're going to be hitting 1945 and lots of conspiracies. So I think you might need to have a seat in this.
I think I might go and get a gin and tonic, actually. But yeah, go for it. Who do we have?
So we have the fabulous Guy Walters, who is a historian and journalist, who has written a book on hunting evil, The Great Escape, amongst many others. You can get him on Twitter at Guy Walters. Quite simple, quite easy, really. Hi, Guy.
Hi there, Alina. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. It's nice and sunny, and and I'm sitting inside talking to you. What could be better?
Perfect. So not only do we have Guy, but we have Luke Daly-Groves, our historian from Liverpool, who is a historian, author, lecturer at the University of Leeds and the University of Central Lancashire, and some weird sort of acronym that I can't pronounce. We can all laugh at me. He's published his book on Hitler's death just last year. Also quite active on Twitter, quite simple tag really as well, at Luke Daly-Groves. Oh, long moment there. And he's up to some quite new research. So hi, Luke.
How is everybody doing? Luke, how are you dealing with the pandemic?
I'm all right, thanks. But I realised Guy had some trouble with his lawnmower yesterday. Guy, did you get your lawnmower going?
Yeah, thanks very much for mentioning it. Yes, yesterday I dug out my lawnmower after about 5 months of gardening inactivity, and I was actually hoping it wouldn't start and I wouldn't have to mow the lawns. And then it didn't start, so I was absolutely delighted. And then it started and it coughed and spluttered. And then the finest historian of wartime Polish history, Roger Morehouse, who has a BTEC in engine management, actually informed me what was going wrong. So annoyingly enough, it worked.
I thought he was talking about a car or something. Was that your lawnmower?
It was my lawnmower. I know. This is what historians talk about. I actually did once have someone saying, we can't book you for a talk because I've looked at your Twitter feed and you don't talk often enough about history. It's just historians should only talk about history. It's utterly, utterly insane.
Well, I
Anyway.
hated you the other day when you started the fry-up thing, because then I immediately felt the urge to go and eat about 9,000 calories worth of fried bacon and sausage. So thanks for that.
We could do a whole podcast about the history of the full English breakfast, and I'm a big proponent of the fact that there should not be beans on a full English breakfast. But
If they are, they should be in a separate bowl, I feel.
I think they should be in a separate bowl, or not at all, because they're not traditional.
If this goes on long enough, guys, we might actually have to put out a podcast about the history of the Great English Fryer.
Yeah.
But Alina,
don't include me.
Anyway.
Get food, Alina, where you are, because Alina is locked down, aren't you?
Yeah, kind of courtesy of the Polish government. Can't leave my house.
Did they not send the police round to check you were home yesterday?
They'd send the police round every day to see if I'm still in the property.
But Russia have apparently gone further. So we're gonna start every show by asking everyone how they're doing. But apparently Putin has now given Russian citizens the choice. They can spend 15 days at home or 5 years in jail. And did we think 3 weeks ago that we'd be looking at Vladimir Putin and going, yeah, that's the guy we need. Bring him in. Get rid of Boris. We need that guy.
Well, you're right.
I'd still rather not have Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Especially not his idea of 5 years in jail, whatever. I can imagine that would be.
Yeah, I just like, it would be slightly harder to enforce, I feel, here. What's the stupidest rumour that you've heard so far about how to fend this thing off?
Isn't it almond oil? Are you going to smear almond oil all over yourself? So that's the most stupid I've ever heard.
Was that claimed by somebody who manufactures almond oil?
Or you put peanut butter on your genitals?
No, Guy, that's just you.
No, shit, sorry, that's what we did. That's something else. Sorry, I forgot.
Okay, let's get to the history. Oh, sorry, Luke, go on.
Oh.
I was going to say, I haven't heard any rumours about how to sort of help the coronavirus, but I have heard that people are bartering bread for toilet roll in certain places, which I thought was absolutely mental.
Hold on, wait. I think it was Roger Morehouse who posted up about a guy trading a donut and a blowjob for toilet roll.
Who was he offering the blowjob to? Or was he wanting a blowjob? I feel we need to clarify this with Roger when he comes on.
This woman came up to him, literally, and she was like, I'll give you a donut and a blowjob for some toilet roll.
Wow.
Check out his page. You know, can't miss it, Roger Morehouse.
You know, I thought post-war Germany was bad with the bartering, but, you know, that's a whole new level.
Let's get on to the history. Let's get on
to offer that to Roger.
Right, lovely gentlemen.
Right, let's get on to the history, guys.
Let's hit some questions. So,
hang on. Before we do questions, shall we just have Luke tell us a bit about his book, and Guy tell us about sort of why they're here to talk to us about Nazi conspiracies?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Luke, tell us about your book. It's garnered some controversy, hasn't it?
Yeah, so I wrote the book Hitler's Death, The Case Against Conspiracy, which was really an academic response to this explosion of conspiracy theories, which we've saw since the piece of skull that they have in Moscow that they thought was Hitler's. It was DNA tested, and then they found out that it actually belonged to a woman, and that inspired all sorts of publications, books, online websites, newspapers, magazines, and then of course you had this big series, Hunting Hitler, 3 seasons, all arguing that history and sort of history as we've known it has been proven wrong. And what I do is I went back to the primary sources. So I looked at, the British and American intelligence investigations. I looked at the Soviets investigations. And I wanted to see if there was any substance to this idea that these files provide proof to the idea that Hitler escaped. And what I actually found is that these conspiracy theorists, they take the files completely out of context, and the intelligence officers were actually investigating them, not because they thought Hitler had escaped, but because they wanted to know why people are spreading these rumours, and they wanted to actually bolster the case for his suicide in the bunker. But it has garnered controversy, especially on Twitter. I mean, I didn't realise just how prolific the idea of the escape really was until I published the book, and then I started talking about it on Twitter. And it's almost daily now that somebody, especially with lockdown, it's made it worse. Football cancelled, everybody's watching Hunting Hitler, and then they just post on Twitter, I'm convinced that Hitler escaped because some guy in Spain on Hunting Hitler is there saying that he saw him. You know, so it's become a daily thing. Lockdown has made my job harder.
So, Guy, you wrote brilliant. It sounds like a fantastic book. Guy, you've written a book called Hunting Evil as well. Are you with Luke?
Am I with Luke in
agree?
the sense that I'm with him about? I think Hitler definitely died in the bunker. In terms of, I'm totally with Luke, and I support Luke's courageous and I was going to use the word sort of attack on the virus of Hitler conspiracy theories, but I don't think we should bandy the word virus around quite so much now. But no, I am completely with Luke, and I think that his book is brilliant, and I think that it's a much needed corrective to this conspiracy theory. In fact, I was asked to be on Hunting Hitler when the production company were first mooting it, and I was offered a vast amount of money to appear on it, and a far more generous day rate that the one is used to, and involving lots of travel. So of course, it's, as a freelance, journalist and historian, it is seductive being asked to appear on programs like this. And I was assured that I was going to be the voice of reason, and that I would be the kind of the one putting the other side, the truth. But actually, I'm now very glad I didn't do it. My bank balance may have suffered for not doing it, but actually, I think that it is a problem being in programs like this. And Alex, and I know we both do a lot of telly. And, you've got to pay the bills, and, you want to make sure you appear in shows that aren't complete crap. But at the same time, sometimes
you've got to be able to sleep at night, haven't you?
Yeah, and you want to reach a broader audience. So you and I both do a series called World War Weird, don't we? And that's a fun series because it does look at conspiracy theory. And then by the end of each segment, it then says, and then the truth is da-da-da-da-da-da. So, yes, were there Nazi dinosaurs? You investigate it, you answer no, and that's fine.
Yeah, and it's all good fun. I really like doing that show. It's so, who'd have thought that you could get paid to just laugh at the Nazis?
Yeah, exactly. So but back to the original question, I'm totally with Luke. I think his book is fantastic. I think I'm also bloody impressed that Luke has managed to fit in writing a book during his PhD. So it means that basically you are one of the probably younger members of the historian community who's still got an attention span. So congratulations.
And both of the books we're talking about are, of course, available on Amazon, aren't they? Alina, you got a question for Guy?
Hello. I do. I've got quite a few questions, actually. So our lovely Twitter followers have been sending in questions. We've got quite a long list of them. We're not going to be able to get through all of them. But we are going to start with something a little bit lighthearted by Fashion Worked. The question is, if Hitler had made for the Swiss border, which bike would he have used to jump the barbed wire? Should we start with Luke?
Yeah, okay. I thought about this, and I know that there's a lot of historians that are all up on the tech, the 1940s tech and that sort of thing. I know very little about 1940s motorbikes, but what I do know about is Indiana Jones. And I thought that if Hitler was going to escape at the border, he's going to be in that sidecar that Sean Connery and Indiana Jones are in, and it's going to be Hitler on the motorbike, and in the sidecar you've got Ava Brown and the blondie German Shepherd on her knee, and then they sort of jump the border, and then they get like a sort of Scooby-Doo twist up, and when it's over the border, Hitler's ended up in the sidecar with Ava on his knee, and then Blondie's driving the motorbike.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Sounds like an epic film, actually.
Look, you've given it a lot of thought. I think that, and this is clearly a reference, of course, in case people don't realise, The Great Escape, where Steve McQueen attempts to jump over the German-Swiss border in a motorbike. And The Great Escape is something I know quite a bit about, because I wrote a book called The Real Great Escape, and I did a show with Guy Martin, looking at how you could try and jump over. He tried to recreate the stunt. And I won't give it away in case you want to watch it again. But I think if Hitler was making Swiss border, and I think, Luke, I think he would have been a bit more old school and gone for the BMX. I think he would have gone for the push bike. And he would have tried. And I think he would have gloriously fucked up, which would have been great. And then he would have died that way.
Face planted 3 inches from the border. Is that what we're saying, with a broken arm?
I'm saying it, yeah. Hitler face planted. There we go.
In all seriousness, this is great because it points out, it sort of alludes to the idea that a man who is in terrible health, he's on a ridiculous concoction of drugs, he's showing clear symptoms of Parkinson's disease in the last footage where he's sort of shaking and shuffling.
He's effectively a smackhead, isn't he, at this point?
Well, I'd put it this way: I wouldn't be injected with anything that Hitler was injected with willingly. Let's put it that way.
Well, actually,
I think. Sorry,
that,
Alina. I think that.
No,
I think that actually. Sorry. I think that it's an interesting point. It brings it back to the current environment. I think Hitler. We would now. His health was so poor. We would now regard him as an at-risk individual from COVID-19. His health was an absolute shocking state.
We'd also be pushing him out into the realms of these morons that are not social distancing, just hoping he would not
live for more than 5 years.
Brilliant.
He was sort of the original self-isolated then, though, in the Führer bunker, wasn't he?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Alina, go. You've got more questions.
Yeah, do you know why? Because you guys started off on the drugs. So that's triggered off another question, actually. So Martin Lamb asks, considering how many drugs Hitler was on, there we go, how likely would it be for anyone to purchase so many specific ones without putting two and two together? And if he did escape to South America, and if he did accept, sorry, because there were two tweets put together and I should have checked the grammar. So.
Right. I mean, I think he was on a huge cocktail of drugs, and you only have to look at, the diaries by his medic, Theo Morell, wasn't it, Lee?
Morell.
To realise the astonishing amount of drugs and what a complete hypochondriac he was. I think Martin's question is it's a good one. It's slightly misplaced because it sort of gives the impression that, hunting for Hitler, in South America or wherever he was, all you have to do is to pop into a local chemist and say, has anyone been in recently to order this specific couple of drugs? If so, it must be Hitler. I don't really think it kind of works, like you pop into Boots or Lloyd Pharmacy and you say, well, if someone's had that means Adolf must be staying nearby. I get the idea, but what it does raise is the bigger question of, we know that Hitler didn't escape, but we do know that various people like Joseph Mengele escaped and Adolf Eichmann escaped. And these are the characters I write about in my book, Hunting Evil. And of course, the point is that Martin is way ahead of the curve there with his question. Because people like Joseph Mengele, you didn't need to do anything clever to find Joseph Mengele. Joseph Mengele was living in Buenos Aires in the 50s, and he was listed in the Buenos Aires phone book under the name Jose Mengele. So you did not...
Cunning, I see what he did there.
Yeah, exactly. Who knew? So you didn't need to be a massive sleuth in the way that Martin's suggesting to be able to track a lot of these people down. So, I mean, that's the serious point. So, these Nazis, they lived pretty much openly in South America, the favoured, retirement destination for your Nazi. And even Eichmann may have lived under a false name, but his children were still called Eichmann. So, yeah, it's you do not need to be a great detective to have hunted these people down.
But isn't it shocking as well that the complicity in South America, that's what always strikes me as well, that this was allowed to happen?
Well, you've got to remember that South America, and especially, Argentina, these were, dictatorial fascist states. They like these guys. And it was nobody's job to hunt Nazis in South America after the war. People sort of think it was the job of the CIA or the British intelligence services, or even the Israeli government. I mean, the Israelis had, bigger fish to fry on their doorstep, with the Arab nations than they did to hunt, what were rapidly becoming historical villains to many people. So I think that, a lot of these Nazis lived absolutely kind of scot-free without really much molestation at all.
Alina.
Me? Actually, let's get Luke to give a quick answer. Go, Luke.
Oh, go for it.
I think sort of drawing on Guy's point there, I think somebody else asked in the questions that we had, that somebody asked about the sort of recruitment, the general recruitment of Nazis. Some light on Mantio Stulutus, I think, asked something about he's shed light on the actions of US and UK intelligence 45-46 and their choice with working towards bad people. Why did they work with these bad people? And this is something which is sort of linked with the Hunting Hitler thing on Twitter recently, and with the conspiracy theorists, is that they like to say like Operation Paperclip, as if this gives them some sort of crazy knowledge of secret intelligence and provides support to the idea that Hitler escaped. But I recently I published an article in Intelligence and National Security, which Guy very kindly proofread for me and saved me from a giant howler. But in the article, I argued that the sort of criteria which the intelligence services set up for themselves when they were recruiting these Nazis and Nazi war criminals, it completely excluded Hitler, because they looked at everything through the prism of security and control. So it was, can this Nazi be controlled? And is he or she a security risk? And Adolf Hitler was a huge, uncontrollable security risk, and British or American intelligence would never have done a sort of deal with him along the lines of Operation Paperclip. So it is actually another sort of non-argument put forward by the conspiracy theorists.
Next question.
Well, I think we should start talking about Rudolf Hess. The guy, he makes me laugh. I mean, just the sheer stupidity of flying to Scotland. So let's hit off with the question by Torrance of Arcadia. I've always been curious about Rudolf Hess. It seems such a bizarre thing to do. Well, yeah, totally agree with that. Was it a genuine attempt at brokering peace? And love to hear a bit more about it and his life sentence.
Okay, who's answering this one? Is it you, Luke, or is it me?
I think you might know a bit more about this than me.
Well, okay, so I don't feel 100% confident that I'm qualified to answer this question, but I will certainly give my semi-educated opinion about it. And I would have thought that Hess was not in a mentally great place. I think that he genuinely felt marginalised by Hitler after 1933 when the Nazis came to power, and he was becoming increasingly an irrelevance. He was someone that Hitler needed on the way up, a very sort of loyal person. He was kind of almost like a bit of an amanuensis, helped him with Mein Kampf. I think that by the time you end up being in government, someone like Hess was someone who was hopelessly over-promoted to deputy Führer. And, you know, we sort of regard being vice president as a bit of a non-job and vice prime minister as a bit of a non-job. And I think actually deputy Führer was really a bit of a non-job. So I think actually it was a genuine attempt to try and broker peace. I still think there was this residual thought that actually the British were the natural allies to Nazi Germany, and between the two nations the world could be conquered. So yeah, I think he was a very strange man. There are a lot of conspiracy theories. I know that I think we are going to talk about plausible conspiracy theories later. For me, Hess conspiracy theories are implausible. They're largely to do with whether he was murdered or there was a body double, and I don't really have a lot of time for them. But
Thanks for giving that a go, Guy. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have much more. I don't have much more to add. I think he was a bit of a crazy guy, and I think that he was basically childlike, trying to get his dad's attention, if you see what I mean.
Good analogy. Alina, so let's move on then.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're going to stick to something quite... I'm going to annoy Luke now. So there, I can't pronounce the name, but...
Oh, is it this conspiracy guy?
It is. Yeah. So I don't know, Luke. There's quite a few questions here that we could go.
So Luke, have you read the questions?
I skimmed through them, and this is sort of typical of the sort of conspiracy theorist line of questioning. It's incredibly in depth. It's incredibly detailed. He talks at one point about the blood on Hitler's sofa leg, which they've got in Moscow, and it's just what they do. It's like they spend like their whole days just looking at the complete intricacies of these topics. But fortunately, I've got an answer for pretty much everything that he said in there anyway, which is great. Which is why I'm so happy that I sort of had the opportunity through writing the dissertation to sort of look into it in as much depth as the conspiracy theorists, because I can sort of help out historians and provide that sort of in-depth rebuttal to what they come out with. So
can
if I take a few of his claims,
yeah, go for it. Take a few and just like bullet point why these arguments fall down.
Right, okay, well then let's start off with this one then. So why is there no consensus on the cause of Hitler's death from eyewitnesses in the bunker on the 30th of April 45? Facts are facts.
Facts are facts. Well, if you...
That was a bit Rafa Benitez, wasn't it? Facts.
Well, no, I'm reading. No,
it's good.
Written.
Yeah, go for it.
Think about the situation in the bunker. You know, everybody's talking about the best way to commit suicide. Hitler has cyanide tested on his beloved dog, Blondie, and it's a common topic of conversation. How am I going to go? What's the best way to commit suicide? Do I shoot myself? Do I take poison? And then, the people, some of these people in the bunker are incredibly close to Hitler. You had Heinz Linger, his valet, Arthur Axmann, the head of Hitler Youth. I'd only seen, been in regular contact with him towards the end. And, he confines himself to his quarters, and you open the door and you're confronted with this scene. There's blood splattered on his sofa, and Ava Braun is next to him. Your first thought is not, right, guys, let's see how the Führer has killed himself. It's not. It's oh my God, the Führer is dead. The world has come to an end. We need to carry out what he's told us to do. Quickly, go grab something, wrap him up. Pick him up. Let's just get on with it. It's shock. You're in a position of shock. You don't go in the room and go, how is exactly as he died here? You just, they dealt with it. They were in a war zone. So it's quite natural that, when people heard it from other people in the bunker, some people, I think there's an account of, it might have been Guncher, he pretends to put a gun in his mouth as to say, he shot himself in the mouth. And some people said he shot himself in the temple. Some people said he did both with the cyanide. And it's just natural for these sort of rumors to spread. But the key point is that they agree that he killed himself. And all of the key eyewitnesses in the bunker that saw Hitler's body in situ on the sofa agree that he shot himself because they saw blood on his body. And that is the key fact. It's quite natural to have these different ideas of how exactly he committed suicide, but the key fact is that they know he did it. And he goes on about this conspiracy guy. He talks about the blood stains on the sofa, and if you read Petrova and Watson's book on the Soviet files, you'll find that they actually tested the blood in 1946, and they found that it was blood group A, which was Hitler's blood group. So it's a really broad sort of blood group, but it's still Hitler's blood group. So I don't know what he's on about saying that it's not Hitler's blood type there.
Hit him with one more, Alina.
Yeah, I was about to do that. I was going to hit the blood one because that actually sounds the most interesting. But you've hit me. Do you know what? Let's do probably the most simplest one. So why are there so many sightings propagating from Argentina?
Well, there's all sorts of motivations for people to spread these rumors, and I give several of them in the book because I looked at the FBI files, which is what series like Hunting Hitler uses their sort of key evidence for this. And the FBI investigated some of these rumors, and they found that they were spread by people with financial motives. You had journalists looking to make money out of it, to sell sort of sensationalist stories. People that just like to create sensation. You had one of them was like a 90-something-year-old spiritualist prophet. So mental illness played a factor as well, and then some of them were there was a sort of political motive behind one of them. So there was a member of the embassy that was trying to sort of discredit the Argentinian government by saying that they're hiding top Nazis like Hitler. Which of course there was some truth to that, but obviously they used Hitler to sort of draw attention to the fact. So there's a variety of reasons and sort of explanations behind the sightings in Argentina. It obviously doesn't mean they're true, and they don't provide evidence for the idea of Hitler escaping.
I think that what both Luke and I have found as historians is that when you look through FBI files, MI5 files, CIA files, you realise how so much intelligence is just complete crap. And the intelligence officers sometimes they've just got to report. If some, batty old clairvoyant turns up and says, "I saw Hitler. I dreamt that Hitler was a monk in Denmark." Then they've got to write it. Well, that's in Q. That's in the MI5 files, and it's something like that. I can't remember. They're all sorts of dotty old women who sort of have these. And anyway, so you realise they're just going to write it down. But of course, what happens is decades later, you then get the more sort of unscrupulous program makers and quote unquote historians who will say, well, look, this is in the FBI files or the MI5 files that Hitler landed in Benidorm in the submarine and had a kip in a hotel in Malaga. But it's not proof. And of course, what conspiracy theorists do, as soon as they see something out in a file, they go, that's proof. And if they don't agree with it, they'll then rubbish the agency which produced it. So they try to have it both ways.
My favourite one so far is being asked to do a piece on the Prince of Wales that featured Edward VIII, going over the top, sneaking off and going over the top in World War I with a battalion. And I'm like, but he didn't.
No.
And they're like, yeah, but it would make an awesome story because we all know he tried to put himself in danger. So if you could find that nugget for me of him throwing himself into action, I'm like, I can't. because it did not happen. But anyway, let's stick let's stick to World War II, because Alina, Guy has another question. You have another question from Alina.
This is going really well.
Yeah, I think it's going great. It's brilliant to have Guy on a sort of panel with me, because Guy has looked into the actual Nazi escapes to South America and to places like Argentina in his book Hunting Evil. So he can provide like the real context which surrounds these actual Nazis who escaped to these places. And it doesn't chime with the conspiracy theorist sort of notion of a mustached Hitler living incognito in Argentina. It doesn't match the reality of what people like Guy and historians have looked into.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
really good point. Go on, Guy.
Yeah, I think Luke's absolutely right, and thank you, Luke. It's kind that, I mean, when I started researching, the escape of Nazis, people did have this sort of idea that it was very much like The Boys from Brazil or The Odessa File by Frederick Forsyth, which of course is a great film with John Voight. And I, as I researched more and more, I realised that there was really no sort of kind of octopus-like creature with its grip all over the world, fomenting a Fourth Reich, helping Nazis escape. I mean, I once I had the sort of mixed fortune of interviewing a man called Erich Priebke, who was a former SS Gestapo officer in Rome. He was a captain in the SS and a Gestapo officer who had shot people during the massacre in the Ardeatine caves in 1944. And he was under house arrest, lockdown, we call it today.
Deservedly so, as far as he's concerned.
Yeah, exactly. And this was in Rome, and he was in his late 90s. He was still very spry. And I was interviewing him about how he escaped to Argentina after the war. And I asked him if there was something like an Odessa. And he said to me, no, I wish there had been, because, I was dirt poor. When I arrived in Argentina, there was no kind of network. There was no kind of Fourth Reich. These escapes happened on a very ad hoc level. And you've got to ask yourself, the Odessa in German is meant to stand for the organization of former SS men. Well, if you're forming a secret society of former SS men, you're unlikely to call it the organization of former SS men.
Not unless you're a complete moron anyway. But mind you were saying earlier you had Jose Eichmann, didn't you? Well, no, sorry, wrong one.
Jose Mengele.
Mengele living in Argentina.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there was, because that was, you're right, that could look like stupidity, of course, in hindsight, but it just shows you how, largely unworried they were about being tracked down. Simon Wiesenthal, supposedly the great Nazi hunter, he never went to South America. And if he had gone to the ABC cafe, in a German cafe in Buenos Aires, he would have seen Mengele and Eichmann having a coffee or a beer together. You could have rounded these people up had you really wanted to. So, I think the context of this is that, the idea of, fiendish escapes by submarine is just nonsense.
So let's do this then.
And if you take this...
Go on. Go ahead, Luke.
Sorry. If you take this idea of a Fourth Reich being directed from Argentina as well, it's completely at odds with the actual history of attempts at Nazi revival. So you see Arthur Axmann, the head of the Hitler Youth, he tries to he has a long-term sort of plan to bring back Nazism. It's stopped by Operation Nursery in 45, 46. And then you have Werner Naumann, who is another person from the bunker, and he tries to sort of infiltrate a sort of Nazi variant of politics into German politics in 1953, and again it's stopped by British intelligence. There's no way that Adolf Hitler, if he'd survived, that he would have allowed these former close colleagues of his to create groups that were sort of disseminating variants of Nazism. That just doesn't it doesn't chime with what we know about Hitler.
So what do you? That's a really good point. But let's do this. What do you think? Let's start with Luke. Is the most ridiculous conspiracy you've heard of, so far as the Nazis are concerned?
Well, in terms of the comic ones, like the really silly ones, I've had Hitler dressed as a woman in Ireland. I've had Hitler dressed as a monk. I've had Hitler converted into Islam in Egypt, which is really silly. But in terms of sheer stupidity, I think, and also it's quite serious as well, is the link with Alina's work with Holocaust denial, because since publishing the book, I've noticed that on Twitter, there's this idea that Hitler was somehow a Zionist and this helped to facilitate his escape, which is absolutely preposterous and damaging, because Hitler he implemented a policy for the annihilation of all Jews. And he even said so in his speeches, in his prophecy speeches. He says it directly, the annihilation of Jews. So it's absolutely ridiculous. But this is, again, it's why it's important for historians to focus on the truth and to tell the truth, and to make sure that, you know, even the little lies can be sort of latched onto these people with harmful worldviews and sort of spun into their own perspectives. And I think it's great that all historians are coming together to sort of stop this sort of thing.
Guy?
It's why Luke basically tags me in these posts, and I give him basically tell him to do it, and then I just go mental at these crazy Holocaust deniers, which is pretty good fun for me.
Guy, what's your take?
So are we talking about conspiracy theories again?
We are, yeah. I mean, do you agree with Luke about that sinister side so far as tying it in?
I do think that there is probably, if you drew a Venn diagram of Holocaust deniers and people who believe that Hitler escaped, I think the overlap would be huge with the two circles. I think that some people who think that Hitler escaped aren't necessarily anti-Semites, but I think that there are a lot of people who do like to sort of peddle this agenda. They also like to promote the idea that the British sheltered Hitler, and I think that's the result of ultimately or initially Soviet disinformation to try and foster this idea that there was an equivalence between the forces of the West and the forces of fascism. So I think the people are kind of putting this stuff forward today aren't really aware of the origins of their own thoughts, if you see what I mean. And I think that that's what's very helpful about Luke's book, and also I touch upon it in Hunting Hitler, is you look actually at this was put out by the Russians initially, this idea of Hitler escaping. Yeah. But I think that on a more sort of jocular theme about conspiracy theories, and ones that I think that are my favourite implausible ones, there's no doubt, if we're really ignoring Nazi spaceships, but I think that the Nazi base under the Antarctic has got to be my favourite. It's the thing about it, it's almost technically possible that you could have gone to the Antarctic and drilled some holes in the ice and built a base, in a way that it's not possible for the Nazis to have gone to the moon. And it's
although that was a good film, it was a laugh, wasn't it? Iron Sky.
Iron Sky.
Yeah,
I saw the trailer.
I'm not sure there was a need for a sequel.
Yeah, there must be. Well, then we can do, Iron Ice Base or Ice Base Sky or whatever it is. I think that it's that there are all sorts of perfectly seemingly sensible and intelligent people who will give some of this stuff credence. And of course, the more it's out there, the more obviously with the web, it just kind of, it migrates. And I know that Luke is very active in actually going around and whacking these moles down. And eventually one day, hopefully, he won't have to do it anymore. But I salute him.
We all do. Guys, let's wrap up. You have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and being our technical guinea pigs as well. We've had a few stumbles recording this. Hopefully we'll iron those out as time goes on. Once more, tell us about the books of yours that we've been discussing. Guy?
Well, I've written quite a few books, but the one that's most applicable to this discussion is my book, Hunting Evil, which is the true story of how the Nazis escaped and how they were tracked down, or how they were not tracked down. So, that's a brilliant book. So you must buy that.
And I'm sure...
I have my own copy, by the way.
I'm sure at some point, Alina, we're going to have to get Guy back on because there's so much he can talk to us about. So we're inevitably going to be annoying you quite a lot, I think, Guy, about recording some more of these podcasts. And Luke, your book, Hitler's Death.
Yes, so I've written Hitler's Death, The Case Against Conspiracy, and it's one of these books where the subtitle actually applies, because I hope that it's going to be the actual definitive case against conspiracy theories of Hitler's death, but it also looks into conspiracy theories about Martin Bormann and other leading Nazis like Heinrich Himmler as well. So there's more in there. And at the moment, I've just published an article on... Sorry.
I was just saying, I feel there's definitely scope for both of you coming back on to do a part 2, if you like, because we had a lot of questions we haven't got to about Martin Bormann. And as I say, you've both done extensive work on other Nazis as well. So I'm sure we can set that up. But the article you've just written?
Yeah, so I've just written an article about why British and American intelligence employed Nazi war criminals after the war. I'm currently working on 2 sort of big book projects. One is a history of the Napoleonic legend in Britain, and the other one is a comprehensive history of British and American intelligence divisions in occupied Germany, so 44 to 45.
Wow.
So there's plenty of scope for sort of Nazi conspiracies in there, and even Soviet plots as well.
I don't know how you do
We
it.
should
'Cause I
definitely do a
basically-
part 2.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll have a chat with you guys about a part 2, and we'll
Well up
carry
for
the
that,
ball
well up for
questions over. So that is it for today. That's it for our first ever History Hack podcast. Tomorrow we will be talking to a father and daughter duo, John and Emily Jordan, about their fantastic new book, which is War Queens, and it examines feisty, argumentative women, which Alina and I can connect ourselves to throughout history, and how they led their troops on the battlefield. So we'll be doing that. So if you have any questions for them, please send them in. I'm sure Luke and Guy would be happy to engage in more discussion on Twitter. Our Twitter is at hack_history. So thank you very much for joining us. Bye guys, and thank you very much. We'll have you on again soon.
Been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Real
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.